Create the outdoor oasis you've dreamed of with help from NFM. Whether you're wanting a tranquil backyard retreat or a lively outdoor party space, find something you love from our huge selection with hundreds of new items arriving every day. Patio sets start at just $139. Shop the latest trends in backyard essentials, from rugs and pillows to flower pots and fountains. Long-term financing is available on qualifying purchases. Unwind and discover the joy of backyard living. Big selection, big savings. NFM.
This episode of the D-Lew Podcast is brought to you by Goalie Nutrition. As someone who's used Goalie for quite some time, I can tell you that they're not only very good, but they're very beneficial. My favorite are the Super Green Gummies. The Super Green Gummies are uniquely crafted with a spectrum of essential nutrients such as vitamins A, B12, folic acid, and thiamine. It supports a healthy liver function, healthy nervous and immune system, digestive health, a boost to your metabolism, and overall health and well-being. There are no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or colors from artificial sources. They're vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and gelatin-free. All loyal listeners of the D-Lew Podcast get a special 10% discount at checkout. Go to goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. That's goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. This podcast is a Believe Network and Siete production. Welcome to another edition of the D-Lew Podcast, brought to you by Believe Network. I'm your host, Derrick T. Lewis, and although this past weekend was extremely wet, cold, rainy, you name it, gloomy, gray, etc., I had so much fun. Saturday I went up to the Monster Factory, not for pro wrestling, not for anything like that, but there was a music video being shot there by a hip-hop artist that's out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And let's just say I made a little bit of an impact. I can't give away too much information about the music video, but all of us had so much fun, and I can't wait for you all to see it. You will be the first to know once I get word on when that music video is going to drop and where you can actually watch it. But I did do some ring announcing, however, for the We Are One pro wrestling show in South Jersey on Sunday, and it was in honor of the recently deceased Jimmy the Jester, and it's still surreal that he's no longer with us, but we really miss him, and we hope we made him proud, for sure. But speaking of pro wrestling, this week I have the King of Camden, the one and only Royal Money on the show, and I've known Royal since I first debuted in the world famous Monster Factory. He was one of the mainstays there. He's a former Supersonic champion, former tag team champion, and of course, former MFPW heavyweight champion. And besides our love for pro wrestling, me and Royal have a lot in common when it comes to music, different genres, different artists that we like. And we also like marching percussion too. I have a drum and bugle corps background for over 3 decades, and he did some marching band stuff too. So we talked about so much stuff. We went from wrestling to music and everything in between. And let's not wait any longer. My interview with the birthday boy, Royal Money, starts right now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when I started in the pro wrestling industry back in 2018, he was one of the first wrestlers I actually worked with in the sense of doing backstage interviewing. He was the first one that I interviewed, and Royal Money is as real as it gets. One of the most honest, straightforward people I've ever met in the business, probably not just in wrestling, but probably my entire life. He's from Camden, New Jersey, the King of Camden. Royal Money. Welcome to the D-Lew Podcast. How are you, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me, man. You always been a real dude from day one with me, man. So, I'm just honored to be on your show, man.
Appreciate it. And we'll get into some of our similarities in a little bit of the in a little bit, but just want to talk about the origin of where you're from, and you say you're from Camden, New Jersey, right outside of Philly in South Jersey. So talk about life growing up in Camden.
Well, it's all over the place for me. for me, it's like it's all over the place. It's kind of like the Bible. Like you can't read the Bible straight through like a regular book. You gotta like go to this scripture and that scripture. So my life is kind of like that because I'm 37 years old, and it's just like I feel like I lived several different lives already in this age, and I feel like an old man, but I'm really not. You know what I mean? In the grand scheme of things. So, but like I'm from Camden, New Jersey. I grew up in church. My grandma was a pastor. My grandfather was a bishop. Everybody in my family sings. They sing, they preach. This is on my mom's side. Everybody sings, preach, or plays an instrument, or they have a church or they're a pastor or something. And it's like so many people on my mom's side. And my mom is the baby girl who met an alley cat. I'll say it was in my dad, like a guy from the streets who rides motorcycles and has been on high speed chases. And it's just like, so they met at McDonald's and they had me. So like, it's this wild world where I always was associated with heaven and hell. Like hell was on my dad's side of the family and heaven was on my mom's side.
Right.
And then you take having solid foundation of people like my grandma, my grandfather, and then you put me in the city of Camden. It's like I have love, moral respect, and code and honor, but I'm a wild boy because of the city. And like Camden is not that big. It's like very, very small. Like I always tell people like they never understand, for me personally, what the words "when I see you later," they don't understand what that means because Camden is so small. Like you can go in the house and be in there for like however long, but when you come back out later, you go see that person again. So it's like, it's just it happens so. It's a city that moves very, very fast because it's so small. And it was like we were leading in like every crime few years ago, and against states that were like way bigger than us, and just this little 5-mile city.
Wow.
Was just so. You gotta have your head on the swivel here in the city, because, like I said, like if I see you later can happen very, very fast. So like you can't. It's a city that you can't be lacking if you're in that type of lifestyle. But I can't even say I was raised in it. It was just like my grandfather thought allowing me to keeping my father away, but allowing me to play in the city was the best option. But you learn so much being in the city, even at a young age as a kid, because everything is there. Everything is right there.
Growing up in, I grew up in Newark, and I have to explain to people sometimes is that coming from where we come from, we see a lot of things at a young age that really we're not supposed to see.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was just telling my sister about a week and a half ago, she was talking about stolen cars, something like that. And I was saying, man, when I was in middle school, they used to put on 5 stolen car shows a day in the morning, all 3 lunch periods, and after school. My sister didn't even know that because she was like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm dead serious." You know what I mean? It was like I seen, people get hit by cars, by a stolen car. You see so many things. You're exposed to so many things. You know what I mean? So I totally understand where you're coming from in regards to that, as far as being young and happen to grow up fast because you have so much exposed to you at such a young age.
Yep. Like like everything. And it was like every nationality was in the city. So it was like I was learning from the whites, the blacks, the Mexicans, the Puerto Ricans, like the Jamaicans, like, I mean, we even had people from Cambodia, and like you was just learning so much. Like I was learning karate from where I grew up. I grew up in Pollock, on Sheridan Street, 1300 block of Sheridan Street. And I lived 1303 Sheridan Street when I grew up. And it was a corner store named called Nelly's on the corner.
Right.
And it was an Asian family, Miss Kim and Mr. Kim. And they had 2 sons, Jay and Sunga. And they was teaching me karate at a very young age because they were like right next door. The store was open every day, so it was like they were teaching me karate at a very young age and like just teaching me all type of different things. And Sunga was one of the ones we had a love for Jordans, and like I bought Sunga his first pair of Jordans, and I'm like, nah, bro, like you got to be the cool Asian boy. You got to have some fresh pair of Jordans. You can't have no corny stickers with the name Sunga. And like Jay was the older brother, and like if I would get into fights around the way, Jay was always like my big brother because I was the only child at the time. My mom didn't have another child until like I was 13, so Jay was always like my bigger brother that always had my back. You know what I mean? So it was like very at that time when I was coming up, it was very tight knit with the people, the community, and then you could see when it just started like later, when as I started getting older, you could see where like things were just going downhill and it was like changing. And it was like, the older people that was like the foundation of the city started moving out and like going to Lindenwall and like stuff started to change. And it was like, people just like right around the corner from me, like, be having shootouts and like little kids got, hit with stray bullets and stuff. So it started to get real, real wild. And it was like, you change with the times, like you change because it's like you got to protect, your home base. So, and it's just like it happened. You get to see that. You see it at a very young age. So it's like you get a sense of security very, very young, and it's just kind of like, my mom, like my dad and I've been there. I was the man when I was walking around with my mom. Even as a young boy, like I had to be a man because I wasn't gonna let nothing happen to my mom, and my grandmom too. Not letting that happen at a young age. So like I was, and I had my grandfather. My grandfather passed in 2002. So like I had him up in that point, but when he passed in 2002 was like kind of the time where I really, really needed him. And that's where things kind of started to get wild for me because like I had nobody who could G check me basically, and I was just figure things out on my own. And like yeah. So I was just a wild place, but I always had a good heart. Even though I did bad things, I always had a good heart because of my grandmother, like the way she taught me and like her just her relationship with God. Like, man, my grandma was just a believer, like, you know what I mean? Like I know there's a lot of people believe in, and I never press religion on anybody, but
right.
You know what I mean? I believe in God because of my grandma. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Like my grandma was from Dillon, South Carolina. So she was down from bottom and she, you know what I mean? They migrated to Connecticut and then my grandma migrated here when she met my grandfather.
Right.
And so like, it was kind of like that slavery mentality almost, but like, I really could see the faith of a mustard seed. Like I really see, you know what I mean? Like it's really the energy and the higher power. So I always had that, and I always had that sense of security and safety, and just always having my head on the swivel how fast the city was. And I really believe that's like me not being fearful is kind of really what saved my life. Because if I was scared, that's literally how you die in the city.
Wow.
Being scared, like, you know what I mean? Because it's like I mean, I used to, as a kid, I used to watch a lot of National Geographic, and like it's literally like lions and hyenas, like, you know what I mean. So like, but you know what I mean, two lions go at it sometimes, but you know what I mean, the tougher lions gonna win. So it's kind of like that, like, so you
Perfect analogy.
Learn how to bark very young or roar very young, like you know what I mean, like everybody got a bigger roar. It's always gonna be somebody out there that got a bigger roar. But over the years, you get in enough battles, like your roar and your battle scars start to, you know what I mean?
Start to show. Right.
But I feel like, you know what I mean? I will always associate my dad's side of the family as hell and my grandma's side of the family as heaven. And I think that's where like the story of my life kind of is like all over the place because I've really seen a lot of wild, messed up stuff on the side I consider heaven by just going to church. And I seen a lot of wild stuff on the other side, but the stuff I seen on the side I consider hell was the stuff that I learned that actually saved my life more than, you know what I mean? And this is not no knock on God or Christianity, but You know what I mean? It's like I just learned things that like I needed to learn to protect myself because of the environment, So yeah, Camden is just, it's an amazing city because there's so much talent here, but it's so much you have to go through. It's like really me moving to Atlanta, a few years ago, I really seen that I lived in a crab barrel. So I was able to climb out, like, of the barrel.
Wow, wow.
And
That's all.
see more.
You have an incredible story, and I'll
Yeah.
share my thoughts on that towards the end of the interview. But
Right.
you had made a mention about musicians in your family, and what besides our love for professional wrestling, another thing that you and I share is that the fact that we're both drummers. So let's talk about that part of your life. So who exposed you to wanting to play drums? What was the first time you said, "I want to play drums, man"? And how did that love come to life?
So my mom said when I was in her stomach, it felt like I was always playing the bass drum inside of her stomach. I was always kicking all the time. Like it was to the point like hard where you could see me kicking through her stomach. Like, you could see me. And so she said I had a sense of rhythm then. So but like like I don't remember the first time somebody put drumsticks in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I think about my childhood, I just remember on Sheridan Street where I grew up at, it was a very, very big house. Like it was like a porch, an enclosed porch, a big living room, a diner room, and then it was a breakfast room, and then the kitchen. And then it was like so many rooms upstairs, and it was like this room all the way in the back though, where it was like where they kept the miscellaneous stuff. And I always was in there like playing on stuff like pots, and like I had like a chest that was kind of like slanted, like kind of like my toms. And I would always just be sitting on the floor, just always banging on stuff. So it was always a piano in the house, but it was never a drum set.
Okay.
But like I was always banging, but like because my grandma passed I forget the year my grandma started pastoring, but when I was a young boy, my grandma would be ministering so many places or whatever. So I was always playing music because on my mom's side, I got so many cousins closer in age on my dad's side, but on my mom's side, my closest cousin in age is 10 years older than me. So I only have, in my immediate family, I only have 3 cousins. You know what I mean? It's my cousin Isaac, who's a phenomenal guitarist. It's my cousin Rodney and my cousin Felicia. So my cousin Isaac was way older, you know what I mean? Because that's my aunt Jean's, like my mom's older sister. My mom's older sister, her son. She had my Isaac and Felicia, and then my aunt Gail, which is the middle daughter, she had Rodney, and she only had 1 child. So Isaac played guitar, piano, bass, everything, you name it. My cousin Rodney played drums. So we were closer in age. So like I would always be around him playing drums. But then when I was at my Aunt Jean's house, and she was babysitting me, my cousin Isaac will always be shredding. So like I will always just sit at his door and just listen to him shred. And it was like, when I tell you, like, I didn't know Jimi Hendrix at this point, but like I'm quite sure he was shredding to like some Stevie vibes, some Jimi Hendrix, and so like I would always be sitting outside of his room because he didn't even know I was sitting outside the room. Like I would or when he came out to go to the bathroom, he see me out there, and then he allowed me to come into the room. But for me, even to this age, I never like reach out to people because I feel like I'm getting on their nerves, and I always felt like that. But like, I would just sit outside the room and just listen to him shred. So then he would let me in the room when he seen I was outside the door. So now I'm looking at him shred and just like looking at all that stuff. So like, now that I think about it now, that's the reason why I love guitar so much. It's like I never picked it up. But drumming was like, I remember I consider this like my first gig was, I was 6 years old, and my cousin Rodney, he was 16, he was playing at Shea LaBelle's over in Philly. And Patti LaBelle came in at one time, and she heard him play, and then she took him on tour when he was 16.
Wow.
Yeah, so like I had to start playing the drums at church. So like I was a young boy. I was very young, and at this point, that's when my grandma, like, I remember my grandma started passing, because I remember my first drum set was a Royce drum set. We got it at like the Pennsauken Mart or something like that, and it came
Okay.
with like, I didn't have no cymbals, so like the first service my grandma had, I played the drum with no cymbals, and I was just so happy to play. And I know people were looking at me like, "Yo, you don't got no cymbals," but I didn't even care. And then I finally got some cymbals, and then
Zildjian or Sabian?
At the time, I was all over the place. I was just getting cymbals just to, like, because you go to the Pennsauken Mart and they had like this little rinky-dink music store, and they would have some cymbals. Like, I remember I had some Sabian 13-inch mini hats, and I left them at this studio years ago. And I'm still hurt that I left these hi-hats at this studio years ago, like, because the studio ended up closing up, and I'm like supposed to come back. And and I was like, I had these. They was AA 13-inch mini hats, and they sound so good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember my mom's husband at the time. He was doing something in the attic. He gave me like this old Zildjian, so that's the reason why I started, like, I fell in love with the ride cymbals for Zildjian. And then whatever, like, I know like the cheap cymbals now that sound good are like Wuhan cymbals now. Like, you can get a Wuhan cymbal for like $30, but like they sound very trashy, and it's just like a good sound. So like whatever the equivalent was of Wuhan back then, I had some crash cymbals that was like that. But and then the Zildjian cymbal that I had probably was like somebody, whoever had it, was like on the metal, so it had like the keyhole in it and stuff like that. But I didn't care, it just sounded good. I was rocking out with it. But then my cousin, like he would be on tour. He would come back and he would like give me cymbals, so I would like get like nice cymbals from him. And
nice.
Straight Zildjian, like, you know what I mean? It was just straight Zildjian from then on there. And but then I turned into a Sabian guy for a couple of years. So I've been all over the place, but yeah, like I was like 5 or 6 when my cousin went on tour, and I had to start playing the drums at my grandmom's church. So I want to say I literally played at my grandmom's church from, man, I don't even remember the year, man. It was so many years ago. But I remember I played all the way up until 2010.
Okay.
So like from the start of her church, when it started, my cousin was playing, and when he left, so I played at her church from when my cousin left to go play with Patti LaBelle all the way until 2010. I don't care what I had to do. Every Sunday, I was at my grandma's church playing the drums.
Got it.
And but yeah, like that's where I really, like, you know what I mean, started cutting my teeth. And it was like so my cousin, when he wasn't on tour, he would be at church. So like I was playing with professional musicians out the gate. You know what I mean? But it was like family. And then me meeting, like, you know what I mean, distant relatives that's coming. I had a cousin named Rollo who was a saxophonist. He started coming to the church playing. Then there was a guy who was at my grandma's church named Deacon Matt. He was phenomenal on bass. Mm-hmm. And then my Aunt Gail, her husband, which is my Uncle Rodney, he plays organ and piano. So he was the organist. But then when my cousin Isaac was there, if he wasn't on guitar, he was on organ, or he was on guitar. So it was like, and then it was like just fellowshipping with so many different churches. You would be going around, and it's like when your church, it was kind of like in church competition. When your church comes, like, you got to be fire. You know what I mean? Like, you got to come, you got to kill when you to guest church or whatever. So it's like,
exactly.
You always had that sense of competition. I always had that sense of competition at a very, very young age. And so like, yeah, I like the one of my greatest moments of playing in church. And like, I think that's the reason why I played so much at church was, I remember my grandma, she had a church, it was on 535 Liberty Street in Camden. And it was I don't even think it was no air conditioning. It was, so like we would have like the front door open, and it was like a side door. The side door
would be open. You got to get some air in, right?
Yeah. So like I remember I was playing the drums, and I don't even know how I was playing this day. Because I was just always lost in the love of playing and having fun.
Right.
And I remember, like, and this is why I don't judge anybody. And I was just thinking about it. I was talking to my brothers, and I got this sense of respect for every human at a very young age, right? Because I was playing the drums, and there was this bum, like this dirty guy, like dirty blonde hair, just like dirty, right? And like he wanted to speak to me, and my grandmama allowed me to speak to him, and like I wasn't scared to talk to him. You know what I mean? So like I talked to him, and we was talking about drums, and he said he heard me from. Now we was like a couple of blocks from Broadway, but he said he heard my playing on Broadway, and that's what drawed him to the church.
Oh, wow.
So he came to the church, and my grandma allowed me to talk to him, and we talked for like, I want to say we talked for like an hour and a half about drums. And he put me up on a lot of drummers that I didn't know about. So it made me to start researching. He put me up on Buddy Rich and Philly Joe Jones and Elvin Jones and like Tony Williams. And he put me up on all those drummers. So now, like, this was like before YouTube. So now I'm going to go like do the research. So like I would, oh my God, Dennis Chambers, Dave Weckl. So like now I was getting like DVDs and like well, there wasn't even DVDs at this point. I was getting the VHS.
VHS, right?
Yeah, like
yeah.
And I was damn, it's making me feel old. But I was getting the VHSs, and now I'm like studying all this crazy stuff. And I always like would look on Broadway for that guy, and I never seen him. It was only that one conversation, and like I never got a chance to see him again. Like, yo, man, I researched this guy, and like I got this tape and this tape or whatever. But it was like he put my brother said he put the battery in my back or whatever, and like he put me on my research and my journey of like studying at that point or whatever. And I remember the Dennis Chambers in the Pocket, and oh man, like all those DVDs. I mean, tape. I'm so in the times of saying DVDs, but like the tapes, the VHSs, I was just always playing them Jones over and over. And then I always kept that path of studying drummers. And I never had no formal training where like somebody was like, other than my cousins, you know what I mean, showing me stuff. But I never had nobody to really teach me. It was always, I learned by ear. And it was just like, I was just always like practicing all the time. And I think as I got older, me playing the drums is actually what saved my life up until I got into wrestling.
Wow. And I mean, I remember before one show, I think you and I had we had discussed something, and I think you say you see the video of mine that I posted on Instagram. You was like, "Oh, I didn't know you played drums," and
yeah,
you was like, "Yeah, you did some marching stuff too." So that's where I think the connection you and I
right.
came, and I was just like, "Wow!" And it's just great. Music is a universal language. You know what I mean? I don't care if it's somebody I met from Cambodia. I don't care if it's somebody I met from the Philippines. A paradiddle is a paradiddle. You know what I mean? No matter where it is.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it, you know, as far as you being able to meet people from all over the country, all over the world that share the same passion and love, and you be able to compare different things. Like there was one time when I was marching bushwhackers at finals, at championships, we were in Olympic retreat, but of course we were all in one big line or whatever. And there was this another drum corps, Minnesota Brass Incorporated out of Minnesota, and me and this one other snare drummer, we started comparing sticks and talking about what the different heads they use, what we use, how we tune, how they tune. And it's like everyone has their own philosophies on what sounds good, but as long as it sounds good, you know what I mean? So that's the unique part about music, and that's where the connection you and I happened really, really early in us knowing each other.
This episode of the D-Lew Podcast is brought to you by Goalie Nutrition. As someone who's used Goalie for quite some time, I can tell you that they're not only very good, but they're very beneficial. My favorite are the Super Green Gummies. The Super Green Gummies are uniquely crafted with a spectrum of essential nutrients such as vitamins A, B12, folic acid, and thiamine. It supports a healthy liver function, healthy nervous and immune system, digestive health, a boost to your metabolism, and overall health and well-being. There are no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or colors from artificial sources. They're vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and gelatin-free. All loyal listeners of the D-Lew Podcast get a special 10% discount at checkout. Go to goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. That's goalie.com, use promo code DLEW.
But I want to shift to the world of professional wrestling that you alluded to. So when was it that you became a fan of pro wrestling?
Oh, man. I was always a fan. My grandfather got me into wrestling. it's so weird because it was like I would live this wild life in Camden, even when I was a kid, like just riding bikes to places we wasn't supposed to go to. But I was always home for church, wrestling, and Walker Texas Ranger.
Texas Ranger. I love it.
So it's wild. So I always will watch wrestling with my grandfather and my grandma. So we will watch the 2 episodes of Walker Texas Ranger, and then, well, this was later, but like I will always watch it as a baby with my grandfather.
Right.
But when I was older, and like, you know what I mean, I was older and I was like really outside doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing. Like I said, I was always home. So I was always home for Walker Texas Ranger. We would watch the 2 episodes and then wrestling would come on. And then like it was just always that thing where like my grandma was cooking some bomb food. And then it was like we was just watching wrestling and like I was basically learning how to react to wrestling from my grandma. I've always been a fan of The Undertaker, and my grandfather, you know what I mean, fan of Macho Man. I feel like my grandfather was my version of Ric Flair because he always had to tailor suits in church. He was always clean in church, like naming the suits and everything. Always took him to the cleaner. So he was my version of what Ric Flair was. But so like that's what made me like Ric Flair, because my grandfather was a guy who wore suits. And but yeah, it was like wrestling was, I feel like wrestling was the only thing we did in the house other than music. I was like so that's where it was like I always will watch wrestling because that was like something we all did as a family. You know what I mean? So yeah, like what actually made me want to get into the business was the 94 Survivor Series when Undertaker and Yokozuna had the casket match.
The casket match. And speaking of Walker Texas Ranger, Chuck Norris is on that pay-per-view.
Yeah, he was the special enforcer.
He was.
And it's so weird how, like, because like a lot of people don't understand how I look at art. And it's like I look at it, you know what I mean, kind of like, you know what I mean, I guess, and I don't know if it's because just being and growing up in music and like just being in the family household, you know what I mean, just having everything around that. Like my family it's everybody do something, everything in my family, whatever. So I see art in a different way, and I seen it through my cousin's eyes and my grandma's eyes, my grandfather, my mom, my aunts, or whatever. So when Jeff Jarrett came down the aisle and Chuck Norris kicked him, he gave him that side kick.
The side kick, yeah.
I think it was because I seen so many perfect ones on Walker Texas Ranger. And then when he hit that side kick on Jeff Jarrett, Chuck Norris stumbled. He stumbled after the kick because the wrestler in Jeff Jarrett, he ate the kick basically. He ran into it and it kind of pushed, you know what I mean? It pushed Chuck Norris. But because Chuck Norris stumbled, that's what made me be like, yo, I think I know I could be a wrestler. I don't know why that's what made me believe it, but that moment was the moment that made me the first idea of being a wrestler. That was the first idea of it, was that moment right there.
Wow. And again, it's crazy. Like everyone has their own. It's funny. I was listening to Busted Open Radio about a week ago. Actually, it was on live. It was like this past Saturday, and John Alba and Tommy Dreamer were hosting it, and they were asking, people what was their first, what was the first time they ever laid eyes on wrestling? You know what I mean? And I can still remember my first, which was Georgia Championship Wrestling, and Ric Flair was cutting a promo. I was 4 years old, and it was a promo that hooked me, and I couldn't stop watching wrestling after that. So it's like everybody has their own like introduction to wrestling,
right? And
it just does this to people. You know what I mean? Like I've met people from all walks of life, because of wrestling. Yeah. And wrestling, and like Snoop Dogg said it, man, it brings a family together, and it really does. I can remember so many pay-per-views that my family watched. They could be off doing something, whatever, but I was fixated on that TV, wanting to know what was going on in that 20 by 20 square foot ring. You know what I mean? Right. So that's important, man. I love it. I love it. So getting onto the train, so you knew in your mind that you wanted to train to wrestle. Now,
well, no, that was the the 94 Survivors was the first idea as a kid of wanting to be a wrestler.
Okay.
But I still had music. I never really acted on it. It was just like the idea, like I could be a wrestler. That moment, I remember that moment making me think I could be a wrestler. But then it like that moment, that idea.
It just kind of just went, the idea, okay, just went away.
Yeah, yeah.
So when was it that you said, obviously you're doing music, you're traveling, things, all these other things. When was it that in your mind you said, I'm gonna do this come hell or high water?
All right, so I gotta go back from, you know what I mean, me watching it with my family, my grandma, my grandfather, and then, you know, just being in the Black community, you know, just like you don't always have an opportunity, like bills got to be paid, so you don't always have the opportunity to go to shows like everybody else do. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So, as a kid, I've only been to 2 wrestling events, like very professional wrestling events.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, I was so young, and we were sitting up in the Raptors, but I know it was the Veterans Stadium, and I remember they still had the old blue cage.
Oh, the big blue cage, yeah.
Yeah, it was Shawn Michaels versus Diesel, and Hunter Hearst. I seen Hunter Hearst Helmsley, like when he was still doing the gimmick, and he still had China at the point, but I got to see Ultimate Warrior. A lot of people say it was a pay-per-view, but I was too young to know if it was a pay-per-view or not. I don't know if it was I was a kid. I was young. Mm-hmm. So, like, I don't know if it was a pay-per-view, but I just remember Ultimate Warrior running down and he clotheslined Hunter Helmsley like a couple of times. Gorilla pressed him and beat him. But that's the only 2 matches I remember was the Ultimate Warrior, Hunter Helmsley, and Shawn Michaels and Diesel.
I think this was 96. It sounds like this was 96, right after WrestleMania 12, right before Diesel went to WCW.
Yeah, I was young. I don't even know what it was. I was just happy to be there. I just remember being way up in the Raptors, just like lost, right? So,
right.
And then fast forward to, I don't even know what year it was, but I remember ECW had something at the Pensacola Mart where, and I'm so mad I don't have these autographs now, being, you know what I mean, training, like being a trainer from the Monster Factory, because they had the triple threat at the Pensacola Mart.
Oh, wow.
I got Chris Candido, Bam Bam Bigelow, Franchise Shane Douglas, and Francine's autograph, and I didn't put it in safekeepings. And I'm
wow.
Thinking about it now, knowing that they train there, I was like, man, I'm like, it hurt me to think about. But what was so pivotal about that day was they was raffling off tickets or whatever. And I was always a loudmouth kid. And my grandfather said, you won't know if you don't ask. So they was raffling off the last tickets, and I asked the guy, and I'm like, yo, what if they don't come? Can we get them? And I know the dude was gassing me like, kid, you know what? If they don't come, you can have these tickets. So we was praying, like, please, God, please, like, let them not come, let them not come. So we stood there, right?
Right.
So, like, they really never came, right? So the dude gave us the tickets. Now me and my friend, number one, we wasn't supposed to ride our bikes to the Pensacola Mart. We wasn't supposed to be there.
Oh, wow.
So we rode our bikes. Because I remember when I was watching ECW, it used to come on Channel 48. And sometimes it came on, sometimes it didn't. So, like, I was watching ECW. So, like, when I got a chance to meet them, it was so cool because, like, they were just, like, just see the tattoos in Bam Bam Bigelow's head. And, like, everybody was so jacked. It was like, yo, like, and it was just, like, the best moment. So, like, we got the tickets. Now we got to, like, we had to figure out, like, yo, first we got to tell that we rode our bikes out here. And we got these tickets. But now we got to convince somebody to take us. So, my friend who rode the bike with me, his mom took us. Because she just thought it was just like a regular wrestling show. So I got to go to the 2300, and it was just like the wildest show ever. And like, she was one of those moms where she thought we were scared because it was like hardcore everything. And she's like, nah, y'all wanted to come, so y'all got to stay. So we was like, yo, bet. Like we did the handshake, like, yo, bet, we don't got to leave or whatever. So, oh man, it was just so much chaos. But the thing that I remember the most everybody had a chair. It was like RVD, Jerry Lynn. I remember Justin Credible. Justin Credible was the only one who had the kendo stick.
Right.
Balls Mahoney. It was just like 4-on-4, and everybody swung. You know, Balls Mahoney and got like he was murdering guys with the chairs at that time. So like, I just remember Justin Credible getting it the worst, and it was just an amazing time. So that was the only 2 shows I've ever went to in my you know what I mean, my youthful time. And then when I got older, I would always go to I kept going to the 2300, and I was always going to CZW shows. And I remember just seeing the death matches. Like, I just loved everything about it. Like, oh, these guys like just murdering their stuff. I was like, this is amazing. And so I was always going there, and I wanted to train, but it really came down to the $5 crossing the bridge 3 times a week.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, nah, I don't feel like I was cheap. I was cheap at the time. I'm like, I don't feel like paying that $5. That's $15 a week. That's how I looked at it. So I never went or whatever. So I kept going to the shows or whatever. And then I remember it was an aerial assault show. And this is when I first got the idea to get into wrestling. It was an aerial assault show. And it was this show where they would like set this like big block box up so the guys can go up on the platform and do like their aerial moves. You know what I mean? So I remember seeing the guy up there, and the guys were fighting or whatever. And once he was getting ready to do their move, they just stopped fighting and they just looked at him basically to catch him. And I was like, man, like they could do that so much better. You know what I mean? And I'm like, they could do it so much better. I'm like, oh man, I wish I was a part of that or whatever. And that was like, so I started asking the guys, like, yo, how do y'all train here? And it was just crazy because like, the rep, I remember those guys when they were security at these shows. Like they wasn't even wrestlers at this point or whatever.
Okay.
And I was like, Moxley was there. I was seeing Moxley when he was wrestling in the trunks and the boots. Brody Lee. Like,
yeah.
So like Adam Cole when Mia Yim was his valet.
His valet, yeah.
And that's like, this was before the Bay. Like, you know what I mean? He was the Panama City, you know what I mean? Whatever he was at that time. So like, I got a chance to see all those guys like at the very, very beginning. And it's just cool to see, like, you know what I mean? It's just cool to see them now and like that, and just to be a part of the business, but to see them when I wasn't a part of the business. And but yeah, it was that aerial assault show that just made me be like, yo, I could be a wrestler. So then I started asking, and then it was like, I don't want to pay you know what I mean, $15 a week. And then at this point in my life, I just started getting in trouble. And I want to say it was like, I always wanted to do it, but I kept getting in trouble. Every time I had the money, I was getting locked up or something like that. And then it was one day I was watching like Jerry Springer, and like the commercial with the dude were like, man, you just at home sitting on the couch, not doing nothing with your life. I heard that commercial so many times.
Right.
But that day, it like really hit me to the core of my soul. And I'm like, yo, you right. And I wanted to go. I'm like, yo, I'm going to train. And I remember right before I was going to go to train, I was driving my car and it was raining. And I felt like somebody hit me in the back. And I like slid into this median and like totaled my car. And nobody hit me. I just like hydroplaned. And like slid into the median, totaled my car. So like I had to learn how to catch the bus. Like I never caught a bus at this point. Like I never caught a bus. So I had to learn the bus route. And like my journey in like 2013 was my first time, you know what I mean, going to the factory. And like I remember I was always trying to come around and like just email. Like I was trying to be ring crew. I was trying to do whatever. And then it was like, I remember the first time, I remember I got an email about ring crew and I came and I met Larry Sharp. And like before I started, I would always watch the YouTube videos And Larry, they had these videos of Larry where he said he just knew the it factor when you walked in. Like he just knew you had the it factor. And like I remember seeing videos of Shaheem and Mark Cruz, and I would just be like, man, they so corny, man. I just want to punch these guys in the face.
By the way, huge shout out to Party Rock, Mark Cruz, and Chocolate Man, Shaheem Ali. I love those guys.
Yeah. So like it was like the worst lighting videos. It was like this red and green, just the worst lighting. And like I was like, yo, I just want to punch these guys in the face. So I remember I was emailing a guy named Dan McDonald. I'm like, who's that? You know what I mean? Because I don't know Danny Cage. I was like, I don't know who Dan McDonald is, but this is the guy that's emailing me about Ring Crew. So I came in for Ring Crew the first day, and I drove there this time with another car, license suspended, everything. Like the first couple of times before I actually really started training, every time I was trying to do Ring Crew, I rode there on a suspended license or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember meeting Larry the first time, and I shook his hand. I was like, it's a pleasure to meet you. And he was like, you here for Ring Crew, ain't you? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, get your ass on the ring. And I was like, well, I guess I don't have that it factor. So I just started like moving the boards or whatever. And then I got in trouble a couple more times. And then I heard that commercial, and I was like, nah, I got to go. So I had the accident. And then I remember it was the first factory show. And I was like, I got to get there. So I went there, and I remember, I know Dan probably thought that I was like BSing or whatever. And I'm like, this guy don't know I'm getting in trouble or whatever. So after I heard that commercial, I had $300. I was like, yo, listen, I want to give you this $300. Because I felt like every time I got the $500 down deposit, I got in trouble and I needed to spend the money to get a lawyer or something. So I was like, I got $300, and it's just like I just wanted to get the $300 out my hand, whatever, before I got in trouble, whatever. So I'm like, yo, and I remember it. I was in the hallway of the factory, and it was at that show, and I was like, I want to give you this $300, and then I was like, I'm gonna get the $200, and I'm gonna bring it to you. And then Dan was like, oh, well, just start this Monday or whatever. And I was like, well, all right, I'll be here then or whatever. And then it's so funny because if you go back on my Instagram, you can see my payment, John, that I posted on my Instagram where like
right.
You can see I paid the 3 and then the 2. And then I came and I remember I met Blue Meanie. I literally met Blue Meanie in the bathroom. Like I was going in the bathroom and he's like, he just took a shit or whatever. And then like I was like, oh shit, that's Blue Meanie. And like I didn't care, he just took a shit, and it was like literally just like loud, right? Because he was the guy that was BWO Blue Meanie, the guy who took the chicken bone like it was a toothpick.
It was a toothpick and just shoved it, man.
Yeah, and I remember, literally when he walked out of the stall, I heard Joey Styles in my head. Was like, is that a chicken bone? Like I just heard that in my head. So the fact that the shit smelled bad, I didn't care. So I remember after I came out the bathroom, the first thing Meanie said to me was like, what a way to meet in the bathroom. Right? So I was like, oh my God, it was the greatest thing ever. So
oh my God.
Yeah, that was my first day training, after being on the Ring Crew and stuff like that. But yeah, like that was my first day training. And it was like after like the first show that they had, at the factory. It was the first show.
So you met Larry, and you mentioned Larry Sharp. Got the late great pretty boy Larry Sharp. Got rest him, and I said, I was very fortunate to meet Larry. I think in 2012, that was my first show I went to as a fan, and I had a chance to.
So you was coming to the shows then?
I was coming to shows. I was coming. Yeah,
wow. That's what's
I was coming to shows, and it was great because I got to meet him. Obviously, I met Dan, and that's when things started to shift, and I was getting to know, some of the boys, Shaheem and Aunt Bennett and some of the guys. And Larry had this unique like aura about him. I don't know what it was, but he was just a really, really, really good. He was a nice guy. And that's the only thing I can remember about the few times that I had an opportunity to meet him. Yeah, he is. So when you started training, was it culture shock? And I asked this to a lot of wrestlers a lot of times, obviously when you take your first bump, you know what I mean? What was it like for you getting your body used to really just beating your body up? What was that like for you?
The only thing that I really had was the side and the neck stiffness in the side, not being able to lift my neck. Like, when you just land on your back and you could just lift your head up off the pillow.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. Like, I couldn't do that. Like, I literally could not lift my head up off the pillow. Like, it felt like on the right and left side of my neck, I didn't have no strength in it. Like, it was getting stronger, but like at the point it was like dead. I couldn't lift my head. So that was like the only thing that I had, other than I didn't get any bruising running the ropes, but I was sore from running the ropes. So I got, from taking the bumps, I got the neck stiffness, like not stiffness, but just the weakness where I couldn't lift my head. And I just, the soreness in running the ropes. But I didn't get no bruising because I always, my grandfather taught me an Indian bath, which is like 91% alcohol and rub your body. So like, I didn't never get any bruising because I would always like rub my body for the soreness with alcohol. But yeah, the thing that I can remember the most was I couldn't, like the next day, I could not lift my head up off the pillow. And I literally had to like roll out of bed. I was like, oh, I got to roll out of bed to my feet and like sit up. But like, and then the collarbone soreness from locking up, that, you know what I mean? That hand or that
collar elbow tie up, right?
Yeah, like, so my collarbone was always, you know what I mean, sore. But
wow.
I was always a rough kid, falling out of trees and always fighting,
Right.
Always getting into something. And like, we were always growing up in Camden, when we was kids, we would always go hard to the body. It was just something we always did, just like keep punching hard to the body, just going until you're tired for like a minute. So like, you couldn't punch to the face or anything, but I don't know, it was just like, we was just doing dumb stuff. It wasn't dumb at the time when I was doing it, but like, we were literally just like punching each other in the body as hard as we could for like a whole minute.
Young and full of P and V, right?
Right. So like, I was always a rough kid, and I was always getting into fights and stuff like that. So it was like, I was already rough, like, and then like my older cousins would always, you know what I mean, roughhouse me all the time and beat me up and give me a noogie, and like, just basically like my cousin would like try to tickle me until I pee and stuff. Like, just, I bully, bro. Like, just bully. Like, so I was always rough, because I remember going back to my childhood, my cousin, he still has a scar in his head now. But I feel like I always had that vicious streak in me. You know those clips females used to wear back in the day where you slide, you clip it,
slide them in. Yeah.
You slide it in and then you clip it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember my cousin, I just had enough of my cousin like tickling me. Right? Like, I just had enough, right? And I remember I kept telling him to stop, and like my grandma or my mom had one of those clips on the table, and like I took that clip and I cut him across his head with it.
Oh,
and then my grandma was like, he was like, ow, he's like, what'd you do? And I remember I slid it in my grandma's slipper, and I was like, nothing. And he's like, this little bugger cut me. Like, and like, he was bleeding and he had to get stitches. Like, he still got that scar, but after that, he never tickled me again. He never messed with me like that again, because I just had enough. It was like, yo, like, you only getting it off because you bigger and stronger than me. And it's like, I had enough. It was like, nah, you're gonna stop. But yeah, I remember that. I was very, very young.
You probably have flashbacks of New Jack stabbing somebody. God rest New Jack. God rest his soul. Right.
Yeah.
But so getting into the training, so you go into training every day. Obviously, you're building up resistance with your body as far as being able to withstand the punishment and all that. So obviously, the factory, changed hands to Dan and everything. Shout out to Danny Cage. And what was it like for you now doing this on the regular? Now you're doing shows. Now you have training and you're doing shows, shows. So what was the comfort level at that point? And did it come easy to you?
I don't know, because like at the time of the factory, I feel like it was still hard knocks. So like, it was more telling you everything you did wrong and not what you did right. So like, for some people, kind of like that. That's like that like type of thing. It's defeating. You know what I mean? So I know I had an issue learning how to run the ropes, and it's a guy I can't even name who taught me how to run the ropes because he's just like a bad person. But I remember him. He taught me how to use the seams in the ring. It's like those seams where they like tighten like they sew the canvas together.
Yeah.
Like the canvas is like three separate parts, and you see the two seams where they're threaded together. So those seams was where like me crossing the seams where he taught me how to run the ropes, and it like he taught me the steps, and I was like, oh my God, that was so easy. So running the ropes was like one of the first things that was hard to me. I never was a flipper, so like I wasn't too like keen on the flip bump, but I think it was Wild Bill. Next time you go to the factory and you look up in the ceiling, you're gonna see the metal beams going across. Like it looked like, you know what I mean? You know, this stuff, the pattern up there looks like clouds.
Yeah.
You gonna see the metal beams going across.
Well, I know the metal beams. I know what you're talking about.
They got like, it's like some of them, it's like one hole and then it's like two with like the double holes. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's drilled through the metal beam. Well, he told me to look at the double holes and look at it and jump up until I couldn't feel, and then tuck my head. And that's how I learned the flip bump. And I you know what I mean? After I got the concept of how I need to do it to flip, then I wasn't scared of the flip bump no more. But I never really flipped. Like, you know what I mean? That's the only thing I didn't do as a kid was like flipping over my head. Like I never really was a fan of that. And so like once I got the flip bump, I never could get the handstand bump. Even till this day, I can't get the handstand bump. Like
wow.
that was one that like my arms would always crumble. Still to this day, I still can't get it. And
so who gave you the name Royal? How did you come up with the name Royal Money? What was the origin of the name and the concept?
So, you know what I mean? My name is Tyrone. So I was my grandfather would always call me Royal because my grandmom and my grandfather had 3 girls and 1 boy. And my uncle never had kids. Well, he has kids now, but you know what I mean? My grandmom got a chance to see him, but my grandfather never got a chance to see his kids. He had kids like when he was 54. He was 54 when he had his first. And he had twins out the gate too.
Oh, wow.
And so my grandfather will always call me the royal child of the family because he felt like he wasn't going to ever, his only son wasn't going to have kids. So he called me the royal all the time. So that was something that stuck with me because I had my dad's last name when I came up, but my dad is like every bit of the word gangster. So like having his last name, because actually being the junior would have caused more harm because I would have got stopped and it would just, you know what I mean? So my grandfather gave me his last name, and then he always said I would have kids to keep his legacy going on. So that's the reason where I got Royal. And then money just came with that. Money was what everybody called me in the streets. So like I would do a lot of stuff that I shouldn't be doing. And like if I would do stuff that I shouldn't be doing and people was coming with me, I never wanted anybody to be hurt because I wanted everybody to get back to their family. And that's the same thing I adopted, you know what I mean, protecting people in the ring.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I want you to get back to your family. So people call me Money because like I was able to very young on, and I think it's, you know what I mean, me, the way I think from playing the drums and playing a lot of songs and always practicing the patterns, I'm always thinking about every scenario that could possibly happen when I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And like always already giving them the Iggy, like, yo, watch out for this, or watch out for that, or watch out for this, because, you know what I mean? So, and then it was like, I only took people that I knew, you know what I mean, was going to bring that same energy I was coming with. So like, we was always coming back safe regardless. And then everybody just called me Money after that point, and that just like stuck with me. So I came into wrestling and I wanted to call myself Royal Tie. Like, just take royalty and capitalize
Okay.
the TY.
Oh wow.
So corny. So corny. And I actually got a paper somewhere where like I wrote it. It's like I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, that was so corny. Like I thank Dan for saying no. So I I was just like, man, how about Royal Money? I just put the two, my childhood name and my street name. I just put the two together. And then it was like, yeah, that works. And it was like I just kept, going on with it. And I thought, like people say they change their gimmick and stuff. So I thought that like my name would change later in years, but like it just always, Royal Money just always stuck all the time for me. And even though I evolved, like the name never changed.
For sure, for sure.
Sometimes that, me being a fan of Chris Candido, I remember talking to Dan like, yo, what if I do the no gimmicks needed thing? And he's like, well, then you have to go by your real name because that's why it was no gimmicks needed. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go by Tyrone. So I was like, all right, never mind. I don't have a cool name for wrestling. So it's like, I'm just going to stay with Royal Money. But yeah, that's how, my name could have been Royal Tie. I don't know how that would have worked out, or I probably would have made it work somehow, but I don't think it would have worked.
I hear you, man. So your first run, you were in a group called Paid in Full.
Yep.
Let's talk about that group for a second. Some of the guys that were in there with you.
So it first started out as a 3-man group. It was me, Getty, and this guy Nate Francis or whatever. And it's so funny how it broke down. So like I remember the reason how Nate got out the group was because he had a match with, I think his first match was like with Ricky Rocks and he won.
Mm-hmm.
And then his second match was with Wild Bill and then he won. And I forget who his third match was, but he felt like he should have won the match. And it was like, what? Like, he's like, well, I just beat Ricky Rocks and I just beat an ECW legend in Wild Bill or whatever. So it was like, he like really believed the gimmick or whatever. So it was like, it was just so funny. So, something happened with a seminar too. And it was like, he just ended up quitting. Like he literally lasted like up until he like paid his tuition off. And then he just quit after that. And then it was just me and Getty. And then we never stopped calling ourselves a faction. Like it was like, we still going to call ourselves a faction. And the reason how the team got together was because when I was catching the bus all the time. When I totaled my car, I was catching the bus. And like, oh man, like I don't think nobody would have ever took the journey that I took like the first 2 years of my career, because I had to catch the bus. And it was like only one industrial bus that would go into Paulsboro. So
right.
it was the 402. I would catch the 402 to Paulsboro. It would drop me off right at the main street. Like as soon as you come over that little green bridge,
mm-hmm.
or whatever, it would drop me off right there by the it was a Wells Fargo there. It's like a Rite Aid there now or whatever, but it was a Wells Fargo bank. It would drop me off right there. And I would walk down to the factory, walk all the way down Mantua. So but then I would have to leave early because the only 402 that would came at 11:21. So like I never got the full training sessions for like a whole 2 years because I wasn't driving. So I would catch the bus and then I would have to leave at like 11 to get down there by 11:21, because sometimes it would come early or sometimes it would come late. So I just wanted to get there early enough to catch it, because if I didn't catch that bus, it was no other buses coming.
You'll be getting home the next day. Oh man.
Yeah, it was no other buses coming. And I didn't know nobody enough to be like, and I'm never the type of person like, yo, hey, can you give me a ride? I would have probably walked home, honestly. But I just wasn't comfortable enough to go back and be like, yo, can somebody give me a ride? So I made sure. So when Getty started training there, he lived in St. Vincent, so he was passing Camden. And it was like, we just bonded. And then he was like, yo, I could drive you home. I passed Camden or whatever. So then it was like, he just started picking me up. And then that's kind of how like it just like the tag team formed like that. Because like we just was bonding from always riding to training and home together. So yeah, it's like then the tag team formed that way. And then Nate got added, but then it was still perfect because it was like when he like left, it was perfect because like we was still always cool. So it was like we just still called ourselves a faction, the greatest faction of professional wrestling. And like we was just like really, really goofy. Like we did everything bad about wrestling, like the kick pads, like everything. Like we use inside terminologies. Like it was just so funny. We didn't have to be in shape. Like we was just like we embraced everything bad about indie wrestling, and it was like so fun.
And you guys can check out all of Paid in Full's all their old matches on the world famous Monster Factory YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to check out some stuff from 2017, and it was just like, man, like just some of the vintage stuff that's on there, and some of the guys that came through and what they're doing now. It's incredible. And you too. You know what I mean? So let's talk about your in-ring style. Now, obviously, your in-ring style is, let's just call it for what it is. I gave you a name, Mr. Beat Your Ass, because man, I mean, but it's literally just it's a mix of strong style mixed with brawling, but there's a psychology that goes along with it. So talk about your in-ring style a little bit.
Excuse me. I was always been a fan of the hard-hitting guys. Like, well, you know, my favorite wrestler is D-Lew Brown. My favorite wrestler of all time is D-Lew Brown. But I was always a fan of like those mid-card guys, like your William Regals and like your Fit Finleys and just those guys that was kind of like that smash mouth or like really wrestling and making it look like, oh, like they really putting that hold on. Yeah. And like shout out to QT Marshall, he put me up on World of Sport. So then I got a chance to see some Fit Finley stuff before he even came to America. So I started diving into that once I got into wrestling too. So I got the chance to see the raw Fit Finley like in there and that, and it was like just good to see. And then I really consider myself like a black Japanese guy because I always was a fan of Japanese wrestling because that's really where I get my Smash Mouth style from, like a mixture of those Japanese wrestling and Fit Finley and William Regal. Who else did I would watch? Like, who can I think of? I just was a fan of it all, but like it was always the guys that was like in my era, APA, you know what I mean? Bradshaw and Farouk, like just that even modern day, like when the Bludgeon Brothers, like that strong style, like that's always like, because I just wanted to really look like it's real. Like, you know what I mean? Like I want the people to believe, like, you know what I mean? Everybody we could throw around, oh, it's fake. It's like, no, like when you do it the right way, nobody ever say that. And 100%. That's where like I always took my training so serious because when I came up, you always hear ring generals. Like, you know what I mean? Guys, you know what I mean? And it was like, well, I want to be a ring general. And it was like, but it was like, I feel like the magic trick is to like, nah, he really did that right there. You know what I mean? Like, and that's where like, it don't take a lot to do that, but it's just like, you got to really, you know what I mean? You got to be pure. Like, cause I'm like, my energy is always pure. And I'm like, I'm being 100% me in the ring. And that's like, it's just like, I'm just taking in everything that I've seen. I'm a mark, I'm a fan. Like, I'm taking in everything in I've seen. And like that was cool to me as a kid. And you know what I mean? When I got older and like, even now, like even watching New Japan and like Noah and all that stuff now, like, but I just take it and do it and do me. You know what I mean? I make it me. I feel like I'm stealing stuff, but I'm doing it like it's me. Like, and it's kind of like when I used to take still like a lot of fills from Dennis Chambers, like back in with drumming, I was still a lot of fills, and it was like if you hear me do it, it's the same Dennis Chambers lick, but when you hear me do it, it's different. You know what I mean? Like
you're putting your spin on it. That's all it
I
is.
put my spin on it. Yeah, so it's like I'm taking the stuff that I see and I just put my spin on it, and that's where like I'm always trying to, you know what I mean, convey that to the fans. And that's where like yeah, but just like Fit Finley and all those strong style guys, and that's my style right there. Like I just love.
There's one match of yours that always sticks in the back of my mind. It reminds me of Regal and Finley when they had that street fight, and that was you versus Graham Bell.
Oh,
and
wow.
Let me tell you something. I mean, I was left speechless by the time that match was over because you two beat the living shit out of each other. And I mean, truly, and I mean it, but you guys were laying it in.
Yeah.
But again, you guys were safe.
Yep.
Talk about that match for a little bit, because I know you two gelled very, very well.
Yeah, so it's so crazy because we gelled at a camp. I wish people could have seen. I wish the match that we had at the camp was recorded, because that match was amazing at the camp. So it was like, oh, we got to do this on the show. And it was a camp, and I wasn't even at the. I don't know why I wasn't at the first day of the camp. But I wasn't at the first day of the camp, and I just came to the camp that Sunday. So, and I just didn't know. I'm walking into the camp late, so I didn't know what was going on, but they was having matches, and they was critiquing the matches, and I remember it was, I think the guy's name Jamie Kilstein. I think he was there as a comedian, Jamie Kilstein.
Okay.
He was there, and he was critiquing the matches, and like, they kept saying the same thing on what they was looking for. And I'm like, I know what they want. I know what they want. Like, but I didn't have a match. They had already set the matches up. So I'm like, yo, I know what they want. Like, if I just had a match. So I think we like took a break or something. And then Graham didn't have a match. So they was like, yo, you want to wrestle Graham? So I like, you know what I mean? Just got there and was just like hearing stuff like, yeah, I'll wrestle him. Like, you know what I mean? So I want to say, like, our communication was so bad when we first talked, because his wrestling talk was different. It was very Southern. Like, like we was talking about the same stuff, but
just the terminology and the way it was conveyed, right?
Was different. So I'm like, so I started explaining. He's like, yeah, that. I'm like, oh, bro. I'm like, your terminology is different. Like, we call it this or whatever. So we actually was learning different terminologies at that point. And then we had the match, and like, it just was like poetry. It just flowed, and it was just like I was having so much fun in the match, and it was like a part in the match where he hit me with this beautiful elbow drop. It was every bit of Macho Man, and I'm like, I remember seeing him jumping off of the top rope, and it was like, damn, that joint is beautiful. And then he hit me with it, like, and I'm like, yo, so. It was just so much fun, and it was like we kind of got like a standing ovation, and it was just like that's what we wanted. I just knew that's what it was. Like they just wanted that realism, and it was just like it don't take much to do it. And it's like I feel like the state of wrestling, like people make it too hard, and it's really super easy. It's literally 2 + 2.
Wow.
And a lot, like I remember Dan would always say, 2 + 2 is 4. I don't care how you got 5. But a lot of people are still coming up with 5 when 2 + 2 is just still 4.
Simplicity is the best policy, right?
Yeah. What they say, kiss everything, keep it
keep it simple, stupid, right? Exactly. Indeed. But as time was moving on, you moved into a leadership role. You became one of the main guys there. Guys like you, TJ, and you guys became a tag team. Money is inevitable. Became the MFPW tag champion. So what was that like, teaming up with him and really taking on the guys like you two, and Getty, I'll throw Getty in there, becoming leaders, during that time.
Right. So I feel like so I gotta go back to Paid in Full first, because I feel like when you like watch the Jones, you don't like really see me talk that much in the promos.
Mm-hmm.
And Getty was the mouthpiece because he was so good at promos. And I remember we had did like this radio interview, and like he cut a promo completely. We was on Completely Damaged the first time, and he cut a promo as Homer Simpson, and it was phenomenal. And like, yeah, like it was phenomenal. And like he always had that, you know what I mean? He could just talk, like coming in to the business.
Right.
So like when we was always in the car, we would always talk about promos, because that's what we was told. Like, you guys ride in the car to these shows and stuff, like y'all should be cutting promos and having promo battles and doing this. Like, so it was like, for me, it was like, I'm the type of wrestler, like, I'm not gonna be in the car like, let me tell you something, brother. I'm not doing that, bro. Like, nah, I'm not doing that.
It's overdone. It's overdone, right?
Yeah, I'm not doing that. So we would talk about promos. So like, I got a lot of information from Getty on how to set up a promo. And Getty was like, he did theater in school, so he already had that acting background, you know. So he would just help me a lot on how to just deliver the promo or whatever. So when I got a chance to tag with TJ, I knew it was time for me to be the leader. And because I knew, like, I didn't know what I had to teach him, but I knew it's just like, you know what I mean? And anytime you tag with somebody and you tag with somebody younger, you gotta teach, they're learning something, you know what I mean?
For sure.
So but I just didn't know, you know what I mean? So, but I knew I had to be the promo guy, because now, and plus I wanted to do promos now, because like I had so much time, and it's like I just was so good and Paid in Full by just, you know what I mean, being the ad-lib, being the Flavor Flav guy, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I had so much, you know what I mean, ease doing that, and I feel like I was always that perfect puzzle piece. You could put me anywhere and it's just going to flow, just because I just love wrestling. It's like whatever's best for the show. You know what I mean? So I was perfect and Paid in Full. And then I just knew that this time was like, I kind of got to be the mouthpiece a little more. And then it was just like, TJ always wrestled like a big guy. So I'm like, oh my God, this is my Kevin Nash. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like, I'm a mark, so I'm always thinking the history of wrestling. So I'm like, this guy's like my Kevin Nash, but we not doing power bombs. So, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, but it just meshed well too, and he bring that energy too. So it just meshed well, easy, and like it was like we tagged. It was a tag team turmoil show where like random people got tagged, linked together as the tag.
Right.
And it was kind of, we was needing another tag team to form, because I think Primal Fear was about to leave and we needed another tag team form. So it was like we was going to have those few matches, you know what I mean, and eventually win the titles or whatever. And so like we had went through it was like it was like the tag team tournament was like a gauntlet where like once you come out, if you win, you stay out there, and then the next team, and then, but I don't even know if they still do it like that now. But at that time, it was so many matches that we had back to back, and we was just like went through that and we won, and then we had the tag team match, and then it was like it was like very high level matches, like right at the gate, you know what I mean? Like it was just like, because we was like, actually at that time, once we won the belts, we was literally holding the main event spot, and like the
heavyweight
championship was like, yeah, we'll put you on, you know what I mean, like wherever here. So like it's so funny because I be telling guys, I'm like, yo, like, now granted, everybody wants to be the heavyweight champion, and like you should always inspire to want to be the heavyweight champion or wherever you work at.
Mm-hmm.
But me, I'm just a regular dude who just love wrestling and just want to wrestle. And it's like, yo, like if you do your thing and you figure out how to do it, you can make whatever belt you got more important than whatever belt you want. You know what I mean? It was like, I did it. You know what I mean? We did it with the tag team belts. Like, you know what I mean? We can make these joints the main event. And we did it for a while. And it's like, and it was just so much fun because the matches was easy. And it's like, I kick him and I punch. and I'm always in the moment. You know what I mean? I feel like if I wasn't a wrestler, I would be on the show with Wayne Brady. Whose line is it? You know what I mean? Where it was just doing the improv.
Right.
Because it's like I used to watch that show all the time, and it's like those guys just like always on the brink of laughing, but they was always doing their thing, and it's like they're so good at it. It was a good show. So like I kind of take that everything I've ever seen, I always use it for everything, for wrestling, all that. Like, so I used to watch that show all the time, and I feel like I'm one of those guys in the wrestling world, and I'm just being me, and I'm taking everything that that comes my way and using it. But like with Money is Inevitable, very fast, we gelled very fast, and it was just easy to wrestle.
Yeah, I enjoyed you guys' matches, as a team, because you know how a lot of times this makeshift tag teams, they're only there temporarily. Well, you guys had a hell of a run, with the tag belts, and to your point, you guys main evented quite a few of the events when we were doing, once, one a month and everything. But you alluded to it, and let's go there when you finally became the MFPW heavyweight champion. Now, obviously, in the wrestling biz, once you get the big belt, that says you're over, you're a top draw, but you're also a leader. You are the guy that everyone looks to. So what was that like, having that badge of honor bestowed upon you?
It was I don't know. It was like, for me, I don't never, how can I explain it? I just literally, it's like everything is so simple for me, just because I really literally just love to wrestle. You know what I mean? So like when it was time for me to win it, it was like I just wanted to make it elevated. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to elevate it, and that was like my job, is to elevate it. Like I feel like sometimes people hold belts, and they don't do anything with them. They keep it at the level, and they just keep it at the level from the guy that they want it from. And they never raise it past that guy and make it, like, you know what I mean, their own. And I felt like that's what it was supposed to be, what I wanted to do. I wanted to take it and make it my own, to where it's like, and even though I didn't have a long run, like, you can't forget it. Like, the energy was just different. Like, and it was like, for me, it was like, I feel like wrestling for me this whole time has been a journey. And like, while on this journey, I was dealing with like real life situations where, like, you know what I mean? Then like when I really fell in love with wrestling made me get my real life together. So like, my whole journey is different for me and a lot of wrestlers that I talk to, because a lot of wrestlers that come into this business were people who were bullied and stuff like that. So like, I never had that experience. Wrestling for me coming up was never a place that I needed for sanctuary. It was just like I was watching it in a loving home. So I was able to learn wrestling and have real life, because I was like literally facing cases when I first started wrestling. Like, I was still, every day I was going to court, bro. Like, so it was like, I think it took me a while. I think you asked me this earlier, like, how long did it take me? Like, it really took me a while to grasp stuff, because every day I didn't know if I was going to get locked up for a long time or get probation, or like, you know what I mean? So like, I was literally like learning wrestling under like a high stressful situation. So like, it took me a while to start to grasp stuff, because my mind was always somewhere else. But like, like I feel like me coming to the factory and coming to wrestle, that's the first time I experienced being lost in a bubble, and like being able to like be free and be like, I'm safe here. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, safe haven, right?
Yeah. So like, I feel like, and now that I'm talking to you about this, I have been bullied. You know what I mean? But I've been bullied by the government. I've been bullied by, you know what I mean? I've been bullied by whatever it really means to be a black man in this world. Like, I've been bullied by that, and I've been always trying to keep my head above water. So, but for me, like when I was younger, I wasn't lost in the bubble, so I didn't experience it like people did. But as a adult, I know how it is to be lost in the bubble, because when I was facing all that stuff, when I was at training, I was lost in my bubble. But then 11 o'clock, I had to go right back to reality and get on the bus and go home. So me learning it in such a, how can I say it? Me learning it like in a harsh situation outside of there is what made me internalize everything that I was learning as a wrestler. And I was so free that's why I really learned everything I needed to learn, because it was like school. I wanted to do well at school. And like, it's just like one of those things where like, so when I won the belt, I was still, in my mind, I was still a student. I wasn't the guy. I wasn't the big draw. I wasn't, whatever it is when you win the title. In my mind, I wasn't none of that. I was still Tyrone trying to figure out royal money and to get royal money. So I just knew that I got this belt now. I got to do everything I could do to elevate it in my power. But I was still, in my mind, I was still a student. I wasn't the star everybody else seen.
I mean, because as the ring announcer, again, announcing you in the ring, as the heavyweight champion, like I said, you were the guy. You were a star in my estimation, and it's where a lot of the boys and a lot of the girls can say the same thing.
This episode of the D-Lew Podcast is brought to you by Goalie Nutrition. As someone who's used Goalie for quite some time, I can tell you that they're not only very good, but they're very beneficial. My favorite are the Super Green Gummies. The Super Green Gummies are uniquely crafted with a spectrum of essential nutrients such as vitamins A, B12, folic acid, and thiamine. It supports a healthy liver function, healthy nervous and immune system, digestive health, a boost to your metabolism, and overall health and well-being. There are no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or colors from artificial sources. They're vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and gelatin-free. All loyal listeners of the D-Lew Podcast get a special 10% discount at checkout. Go to goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. That's goalie.com, use promo code DLEW.
But you took that, and we'll talk about Atlanta in a little bit, but you did do an episode of AEW Dark.
Right.
In the early part, I think it was the latter part of 2020 or the early part of 2021. So what was that experience like doing Dark in a 6-man tag?
Man, it was wild. It was so wild because my direct deposit got lost wherever direct deposit gets lost when it gets lost.
Oh, no.
So I was out there with no bread, right? But they had the shuttles to get you to the arena and the shuttles to get you back to the hotel.
Okay.
Granted, the only side was me and Max flew there together. So Max was like, all right, let's get a hotel together, you know what I mean? Yada yada yada. And he went through Expedia, and I'm like, bro, it was actually cheaper. We didn't stay at the hotel where all the AEW wrestlers stayed, which we should have, but we didn't. And we stayed at this hotel that was only 5 minutes from the other hotel where we had to go to get to for the shuttles.
Right.
And it was literally just a bridge. And I was like, all right, man, you already booked it. So I'm like, but if you needed the extra money, I would have just gave you the extra money so we had stayed at the hotel. But what was crazy was it would have been cheaper to stay at the other hotel if we had just ordered it directly through the hotel and not went through Expedia.
Right.
So we didn't stay there. So it was the bad thing about it was it wasn't that far, but every morning the one bridge that literally goes straight across was closed every morning. So we had to take a longer way.
Wow.
Every morning yo, what is going on with this bridge? Today it want to be closed this whole weekend. So we had to go a longer way, and then we finally got to the hotel. And I remember seeing everybody. Everybody was getting breakfast, and I'm like, yo, this is everybody. You know what I mean? And it was cool because Max was my icebreaker for Ricky Starks because he knew Ricky Starks from Texas and everything. And so it was just cool, just seeing everybody. And then it was you take the shuttle, and then we had to go in there. And they had this high tech machine where it took your temperature, and it's so funny. But Max, everybody know Max has a big nose, whatever, right? And like, so we had to
Shout
wear
out to
our
Max
mask,
Sterling.
right? So because his nose is so big, the thing wasn't registering like the mask. So like every day he had to move the mask up or down. It's like you gotta ask him about it next time you see him. Like he just had like an issue with the mask in his nose. It was so funny. And then I remember like Angelico like was making jokes about it because it was like every day. Like so it's like it was so funny. So so we get there and oh man, the like so my girl was like, it's Florida. You don't need a jacket. Like it's Florida or whatever. Jacksonville was not. Jacksonville was on its own climate. Like it was cold. Like it was like winter time.
Agreed.
First day it was warm, but it was like a tsunami rain. Like I'm dressed up in a suit, bro. Not a suit, but I was dressed up, nice shirt, slacks, shoes, like literally drenched. Like you could see my nipples through the shirt.
Wow.
So I'm like, I don't want to look bad and go put on some dry clothes. So I'm going to stay right here. And I'm going to shake everybody's hand like I'm not drenched right now. And I got so much respect for it by like actually being acting like I wasn't wet, but I so was.
No sell it, brother.
right. So but yeah, I eventually dried up or whatever. And when we first got there, they had all the matches for Dynamite and all the matches for Dark on the board. So the first day we wrestled Team Taz or whatever, and this is when they was like climbing, you know what I mean? Because of some circumstances, it never aired or whatever. But like just the fact to have that experience, to see them coming out, and it was like I kind of remember that one Kevin Hart joint where he was like he went to a Jay-Z and Kanye West concert, and he was like, yo, they had fire, right? So it's like I felt like that. So mind you, it was so cold to where like, so I brought my Monster Factory hoodie and I brought like this little thin like track jacket, like not track, but like, yeah, like a track jacket that like hugged to you a little bit. So I like had to wear that one, put that one on like underneath the Monster Factory hoodie. So like to try to stay cold, but it was so cold they had like the big heater joints, like, you know what I mean, out there and everything. Like, yo, when I tell you it was like on its own climate, like you can like blow and like see your breath. It was that cold. And like we was still outside, everybody was still outside wrestling. But it was like once you like you would be cold, like if you was out there being like the audience or whatever for Dynamite. And so like we was doing it like every time a commercial happened, we would all go back to the heat. Like
right.
Get warm quick and then come back like woo.
Because Daly's place has that opening in there, right?
Yeah. So but when it was time to wrestle and you was out there in your gear, like once it was wrestle time, it was like it was not even cold at that point. Like and but then it was like I remember Team Taz coming out and I'm like, yo, they got fire. Like, and it was just like, yo, they got fire. And that was like my first experience of like seeing like real pyro where
right.
I'm in the ring, like, and like it was just such a great experience. And I just remember one part of the match, and I wish the world could have seen it. And I remember like because it was we wrestled Hobbs. It was Hobbs, Brian Cage, and Ricky Starks.
Okay.
And like my spot was with Ricky Starks, and I'm sorry, my spot was with Brian Cage, and it was one joint where he hit me, I hit him, I kicked him up. Well, he hit me, he got up on me fast, and then he whipped me off. I kicked him up because he was trying to give me a back body drop, and when I kicked him up, he like no-sold it and he flexed, and I kicked him mid-flex right in the face, and that was one of the things like, you know what I mean, Tony Khan popped for or whatever, and it was like just one of the greatest experiences, whatever. And then it was just kind of like let down when we found out the next day that they wasn't going to air it or whatever. But it was just still like the greatest experience of getting to have that match. You know what I mean? Even if they didn't see it. So the next day we came back because they were like filming for they had off for Christmas, so they was filming the Christmas episode that Thursday for next week or whatever. And they was like giving dark matches, so like I just thought my opportunities was like completely like wasted or whatever. So like it's so funny because I feel like that was the first time I really like I lost faith when I shouldn't have lost faith. And like I remember like it wasn't that Thursday wasn't like the first day when we came in and all the matches was already written on the board. On the board that day, that Thursday, only the Dynamite matches was written on the board. So they was like, Ref Aubrey was writing the matches in for dark. And I'm like, she was getting like writing everything. And she got down to the last line and she wrote the name. And then it was like verses, and then she was like started writing names. I'm like, man, I'm not getting another match or whatever. And I turned around, and then I remember Max was like, "Yo, Royal, you got a match." And I turned around, I was like, "Oh, I was the last name she wrote," and I was like, "Oh man!" So I was happy about that, and that's when that's the match that aired. I got a chance to wrestle the Gun Club.
Yeah,
what's the Gun Club? The Guns. The Guns or the Guns? Was it the Gun Club at the time? I think it was.
Yeah, it was all three. It was all three of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a chance to wrestle the Gun Club, and so we'll go back a little bit. I was at the very, very first AEW show, and I was at a couple of shows after that. So, but I never got a chance to wrestle those shows. But this was my first opportunity to wrestle. So I had seen Billy Gunn a couple of times, but like I'm never really like, I don't know why, because like Billy Jordan Gunn just like starstruck me. It was like, yo, that was like, I'm a mark. You know what I mean? That was like DX Billy Gunn. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, I never, it's like, he was like, I don't want to get on his nerves. So I'm not going to say anything to him or whatever. So my icebreaker with Billy Gunn was the match or whatever. And that was my first time ever, like, you know what I mean, speaking to him. And it's so funny. It's so fun to watch AEW now to see Colton, how advanced he is now. Because when we had that match, if you go watch that match, the last two moves he gave me, he was so terrified to give me those moves. And it was kind of like I kind of kicked into my vet moment, and I was like, nah, I got him. I got him. You know what I mean? And I took him and I was like, nah, bro, I'm gonna jump for you. We're gonna do the move. They're gonna be smooth, bro. Don't even worry about it. And we got into the match, and then we had the match and everything went good, and he hit me with the moves and everything was fine. But like what the greatest thing that happened for me in that moment was when I was coming up in the business, Wild Bill, I remember he would always give us stories about ECW, his time in ECW.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one thing that he said that stuck to me, that it hit me after that match, after I got pinned. But he will always say that you got to learn how to lay on your back and look at the lights and love it. You know what I mean? Just like love laying on your back, looking up at the lights.
Mm-hmm.
And like in that moment, I knew exactly what he meant. So like in the match, if you go watch the match, I only got one punch. And I was always taught, if you only get one punch, make that punch good. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the punch is good. And I remember he ducked the clothesline. I was trying to take his head off. You know what I mean? And hit me with a face bump. I took a good face bump. And I remember selling over to the corner. And Billy Gunn was like, oh my God, good face bump, kid. I was like, I wanted to be like, thank you, sir, thank you. But it's like, I'm like, the market to just wild out and it's like, just break character, right? So like, I'm like, I got to keep selling or whatever. So I'm selling. He hit me with it like a Euro joint. I'm selling for that. He was just like praising me in the corner. And then there was a part where like they dunked on me or whatever, like world or whatever. So when he hit me with the Euro, I like sold down. He's like, oh, you got to sell up. He's like, and then I sold up and then I got dunked on or whatever. And then he hit me with that first move. And then like they pinned me, and then like who was it? Baron Black and Mike Verna broke it up, and then like it just went to like a shit fest after that, where they was like beating him up, and then they was throwing him into the guardrails and everything, and then Cole hit me with the last move, pinned me 1, 2, 3, and then it was a promo. Austin cut a promo, and then after the promo, Billy Gunn stood over me. And he was like, good shit, kid. And I was like, thank you, sir. And it looked like he was talking shit to me, but he wasn't. Like, he was like just saying good shit, like, you know what I mean, telling me how well I did. And it was just like, now it was just the lights, and it was like, oh, I know what coach meant now. And I was just looking at the lights just bounce off the top or whatever, and it was like, this is like the greatest moment ever. So like for me, it didn't. I'm not. You know what I mean? Granted, I would like the world to see the first match because I looked exactly like Royal Money in that first match, and that was kind of the bummer where it was like, well, it was kind of. It wasn't the bummer. It was a good experience, but like the whole hood watched. When I tell you, the whole hood watched AEW that day. And like everybody was calling me like, bro, you got your ass kicked. And I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? But like
they don't understand. But they don't understand the magic of it either. I mean, the fact that
like so funny. But if they had seen the first match, it was like they'd have been like, oh, yo, you look like Royal Money. But it wasn't about that, but it was just like that moment after that still just made it not having the first match air. That moment after that was just like, I don't even care that first match air. Yo, Billy Gunn just said I did good. You know what I mean? And like it be situations like that, you know what I mean, that's what keep me around, like where it's like I can't forget those moments, you know what I mean? And that's where it's like, if I can have those moments, I know it's more greater moments to have. I just gotta stay the course, you know?
For sure. Now you did go to Atlanta, you know, to train at Nightmare Factory, to take your talents there for a little bit. And after that, you know, you came back to New Jersey. And what are you doing now? You know, now that you're back up north and doing your thing. I know you're doing something with OTN. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so when I got to Atlanta, like I got there August 26th, August 27th, I hurt my ankle, which is it was the biggest blessing I've never asked for, right? So like you know what I mean, I believe in God, so I felt like that was the first time God ever sat me down to like, nah, I need you to be still and not do nothing. There's some things that you got to see that you've been missing. And I remember when I hurt my ankle, like I wasn't even mad I was upset, but I wasn't mad that I hurt my ankle. And I just remember praying to God, and I said, God, I need you to teach me everything you need me to see. And everything that I miss, I need you to, you know what I mean, teach it to me. Because I know as soon as I learn those lessons, I'll get my healing or whatever. And that time there was just amazing because like, shout out to Preston Vance at AEW. Like, that's like my brother, man. Like my brother from another mother. Like
Michigan Muscle, man.
Yeah, I was staying at his place out there in Atlanta. And I remember like when I got there, I'm like thinking like I was gonna see bro and get the chill. And he's like, all right, guys, I leave tomorrow for 10 days. So I'll see y'all in 10 days. I'm like, damn, bro, we just got here. So I didn't know nobody. Shaheem moved down there with me, so I only knew him, but we was in the same place. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know nobody out here to do nothing. So, but it was like a cul-de-sac in the back. And, you know, I love the cannabis. So I would smoke weed and like, I was able to mourn my grandmom's death because you're like, I mean, even people pass away and you get over it, but it's like when you think about it, it's so much you could do in your city to take it off your mind. You know what I mean? Like
right.
Or you could do dumb stuff and you know what I mean, get in trouble or whatever. So like being in Atlanta, like I didn't know nobody there, so I couldn't go do anything stupid. I could have did something stupid, you know what I mean? But why do that? You know what I mean? But like I couldn't even go like over to a friend's crib or whatever. So like I was literally like I would chill in my car, I would smoke, I would like I was starting to put the pieces my girl Kim before I left for Atlanta, she's what is it? Where you do like your family search history?
Like me in 23 or something like that, or
yeah, like
Ancestry.com. Yeah.
So she was doing that, and like it was so funny because like where I lived at in Camden before I moved to Atlanta, my grandfather grew up the street, You know what I mean? Like when he was like 3 years old. So I got a chance to do all that and like put pieces. I was putting a lot of family pieces together or whatever. And I was able to mourn my grandma's death. So, and then it was like in the wrestling side, I was still going to the Nightmare Factory because they was in the Chip Smith place where like you just see all the football players that he, you know what I mean, and train for the NFL and stuff like that.
Right.
And it was cool to see Jalen Hurts' signature and stuff in there when he was in Oklahoma.
Nice.
I couldn't wrestle, so it was like I was just working out, and it was like I was just chilling with Glacier and Ernest the Cat Miller all the time. And it was just like the greatest time ever. And it was just like I got a chance to not wrestle and show them what I could do, but I got a chance to just sit down and talk wrestling to them. So like the fact that they was vibing with me on how I think and how I see wrestling, like the fact they was just vibing with me on how I talk about wrestling, I knew I was in the right spot. So that's another thing that kind of made me comfortable when I got the injury. Like I could take a break from wrestling right now because I know like my headspace is in the right area. And now I could kind of like take the pressure off and focus on the stuff that I need to focus on and rehab my ankle and stuff like that. So fast forward to me moving back, my daughter, I have a 17-year-old daughter who thinks she's grown. And so I had to move back because, you know, that's the most important thing that I feel like I have in my life. And like I was 100%. So I shout out to my girl Kim, because when I was down there and I was rehabbing, that was like the first real injury that I had. So like I didn't know when it was tender. The tenderness still felt like pain, and I didn't know the difference in pain and then it was tender. So she was like, "Nah, man, you should be fine now. Like you an athlete. Like it should have recovered by now or whatever." So I was like, "All right, let me try." So it was this brace, and I just didn't like the way it felt because I probably tightened it too tight. But I played around and I tightened it right, and I was able to like start rolling around in the ring or whatever. And then I'm like, man, you know what? My ankle do feel good or whatever. So I remember on the way home, shout out to Congo, because Congo had a match in Tennessee, which was 2 hours on the way home. And he hit me up and was like, yo, man, I'm trying to see if I can get you on the show. And then he pulled some strings. He got me on the show. So I was able to wrestle him on the way home or whatever. And it's a funny story about that because I booked the hotel and then like they overbooked. Like the whole Tennessee was like no vacancy, which was like wild. But I wrestled Congo and then I felt so good. And I feel like I made one off movement because I had a spot in that match where I hit Congo and he was in the corner and he sold to that corner, but I was already in this corner to hit him in that corner. And then it was like I turned around, he wasn't there, and then I had to move to the next corner and then hit him, which it was fine, but that's a movement that I don't like to make. I like to be in the position the right way. So but it was like it helped me where I need to be, and then seeing the match, I felt like I was a shell of myself. And then the second time I got in the ring was the 2300 show. At the 2300.
The Battle Royal.
Then, the Battle Royal. And then I had a match. Cheech had a show, We Are One. Shout out to We Are One. Cheech had a We Are One show.
I was there.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, right.
The hardcore Battle Royal.
Yeah, and then it turned into a triple threat. And then I wrestled Lance Anoy at a festival in Allentown, PA. So that was 4 matches I had. And then but then I was back home and it was like I just took a break and it was like I needed to still get some stuff together with me because I feel like mental health is like the realest thing, you know what I mean? And a lot of people should like really like pay attention to mental health a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I was just like focusing on me because like in this business in wrestling is crazy and it's like a lot of stuff changed, you know what I mean? And like it changes fast too. So like I just had a lot of things to work out for me personally. And like I did that. So now like I'm back 100% in wrestling. My ankle is 100%. I had a couple matches. Shout out to Pro Wrestling R. Shout out to Super Crazy. Super Crazy opened their doors up to me to train, and I've been training there and meeting a lot of this young talent that's coming in the indies. And it's cool to have some Monster Factory guys who came up with me. Shout out to Primal Fear, Manny, Matt, and Gabriel, even though I want to call him Jude. And Getty was there for a little bit before he retired. But yeah, like they're keeping me in shape. But you said about OTN. OTN is like, it's family, you know. It's like it's a family thing or whatever. It's the guys that like I know that's not taking wrestling as a joke. Like I feel like it's a lot of things. It's a lot of amazing things about wrestling. It's a lot of different styles, but it's a lot of I feel like the strong style is dying, kind of. Like a lot of people afraid to get hit or whatever the case may be. So like that strong style. I'm lying. Strong style is not dying, but it's a gap from where strong style still lives and where it's not living, if that makes sense.
Correct.
And it's like a lot of people think on TV those guys are not hitting, but those guys are actually really hitting. And then so like I know before it was a time where guys wasn't hitting. I feel like I'm giving too much of the business, but it was a time where guys were working, you know what I mean? Where they wasn't hitting. But you also got UFC out now. And it's like, oh, if we want to go see a real fight, we go watch UFC. We don't want them to do that. We want them to watch wrestling. So it's like, these guys are really hitting now. Like, it's still in safe spots, but that contact is there. So it's a spot where strong style still lives, and it's a gap in between where it's like dead. So I'm the guy that's trying to still teach it to the guys around here. So OTN is like keeping that culture alive for the people that want to learn. And it's only like 4 of us. And it's like a kind of like where it could be as many members as it could be. It's no number of members that we don't want, but we're not letting people in the group that's just going to play around with it, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
We want people that's serious about this craft to be a part. And it was only 3 of us. It was Daniel Alexander, Shaheem Ali, and me. And then recently, Samuel Falsey just got added to the group because the higher ups of OTN like his work. And he's super, super talented. And I met him at Super Crazy. So I was always telling the guys, like, yo, this guy got to be a part. You know what I mean? And it's just like, I didn't know I had the it factor because like my first day at the factory, I was on the ring crew. But it's a story that I never told in like about my time at the factory and about my time with Larry Sharp. So when I was still catching the bus to the factory, I remember one time I missed the 402, and it was I could get this 450. I can get any of like the 403 or the 401. The 402 went all the way to Paulsboro, but the 401, the 403, or like the 412, and like all these weird numbers could get me to Woodbury, and then from Woodbury I can catch the 455 to Paulsboro. So this one particular day, every day, like anytime I missed the 402, I would catch a connecting bus to Woodbury. I would always get the 455 at the right time to take me to Paulsboro, right?
Right.
So this one particular day, I didn't know every other hour the 455 went to 2 different spots. So the 455 would go to Mantua, which is, you know what I mean, past Paulsboro. And then it would go to Mantua, which was the last stop. And then it would come all the way back around. It would go to the Cherry Hill Mall. And then every other hour, so 1 hour, it would go to Woodbury National Park. and it wouldn't go to Paulsboro, and then the other hour it wouldn't go to Woodbury National Park and it would go to Paulsboro. So I was on the hour that it was going to National Park. So when I got there, I'm like, oh man, this joint is not even going to Paulsboro. So I would have to wait a whole hour for that joint to go all the way back to Cherry Hill and then come all the way back around. But it would have made me too late to go to the factory. So I called the factory. They still had a landline at this point. This was years ago. They still had a landline. And I called the factory and I'm like, yo, I'm not going to be able to make it to training because I missed the wrong connecting bus. And it's like a whole hour. So Larry came and picked me up. And he had this Cadillac, and I love Cadillacs or whatever. So he came and picked me up in this black Cadillac or whatever. And we rolled back to the factory. And that day, so at this point, and I got to take it back further. When Paid in Full first debut or whatever, right? We like bust into the show. You know what I mean? It was part of the show, but we like bust into the show and we was like being disrespectful assholes, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so much magic in the first appearance of Paid in Full that like Larry thought we was really disrespectful kids. And he thought, he's like, man, somebody should actually whip their ass. Like he really bought it or whatever. And that was the first ever show Paid in Full was on. And we worked Larry basically. So like we knew the magic was there at the very beginning, but we didn't know to what extent, basically. You know what I mean? We didn't know at what level the magic was there.
For
but
sure.
The fact that we was able to work Larry was just like already a great goal, you know? So like when I was riding, so fast forward to when I needed to ride, Larry came and got me and he picked me up and we was in the car. And that day he told me I had the it factor. And it was like one of the greatest moments for me. And I just really never told anybody because I'm like, it was just me and Larry. And I'm like, nobody would believe me if I told him. You know what I mean? So I never talked about it, but it was like, that was like one of the greatest moments for him to tell me that. And that was like one of the moments where it was so many times that like, I would want to quit, you know what I mean? But I never quit because of that, you know what I mean? And like, that's why I never really looked at holding the title or like when my opportunity to win the championship, I never looked at because I was always still that student. And it's like, I always wanted to, you know what I mean, get better and better. If Larry told me I got the it factor, then it's my job to get better and better. So it was like, I just wanted to keep growing. And it was like, always keep my nose down and just keep working and keep growing because my OG told me I had the it factor. And that's one of the things that was always like near and dear in my heart because that was our moment. You know what I mean? That's like my fondest moment with Larry because it was like, I didn't get the it factor the first day, but you know what I mean? I finally got, you know what I mean, it that day.
Earning his respect for sure.
Yeah. And I felt like I'm on the level with those guys that he talked about in that YouTube video I watched before I even got into the business. And that's just like, that's like my greatest Larry Sharp moment. And I'm like, I forever cherish that. But like, I never told that story. Like I told that story to my homies, you know what I mean? Like Shaheem and everybody, but I never told that story publicly.
Well, I mean, I'm honored that you even shared that story on my show. I definitely appreciate that. I waited for this moment to tell you this.
Mm-hmm.
And just, we took a lot of journeys in this interview.
Right.
From the beginning, you know, living in Camden, you know, family background on both sides, you know, being a musician and all those aspects of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking like, man, like your life, your story needs to be told because whether it's a movie or a book, I think because I feel like you could motivate somebody that may have walked in a similar path as you. And I'm just thinking like, man, you have lived an incredible life, an interesting life, and wrestling and music got you to where you wanted to be and where you wanted to go and where you're still growing, you know? So I think it's remarkable to really see. And again, I've known you 4.5 years, but just to see the evolution of Royal Money, the human being, you know, the father, you know, you know what I mean? The leader, you know, the wrestler, all those things, you know, it's been a pleasure for me, you know, to see, from up close and afar too. So that's I wanted to use this opportunity towards the end, to let you know that. But I know we got to get out of here in a little bit. But if you could plug, your social media where people could buy your merch, the whole 9 yards.
I gotta create some new merch. I haven't been I'm getting back into the groove. So now that I'm a part of OTN, a lot of ideas are changing. And I'm we're always brainstorming because OTN is still fairly new. It's kind of got its own type of vibe outside of wrestling, and it's just because it's really not a wrestling thing, but because I'm a part of it, I want to bring it to wrestling. So I'm kind of in charge of the wrestling aspect of it, but it's really a culture thing. You know what I mean? Everybody is ninjas. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a play on word, but everybody is a ninja in every race, and it's just it's just it's a safe haven for actually us all keep it real and we can all talk. You know what I mean? And it's I feel like Shaheem is the first student of OTN because it changed his life so much drastically. You know what I mean? A lot of he's doing amazing in Atlanta, and it's just a great teacher. The guys that's our OGs in OTN are very, very good teachers. They have a lot of wisdom, and they just want us to be the best possible version of us. And that's where it was easy for me to be a part of it. And it's still at the very new stages of trying to get merch, but I'm trying to do all my merch with OTN, and it's I still have some Real Money shirts, but you gotta hit me up for them in the DM. But all my social media is Camden Royalty. That's my Instagram. That's my Twitter. Also OTNFVR. That's Only the Nations. And that's literally at OTNFVR, and Only the Ninjas, which is the main OTN account of the OTN, and then OTN FVR are the pups, and then it's only 4 members of Only the Ninjas: Samuel Falsey, Royal Money, Shaheem Ali, and Daniel Alexander. So
awesome.
It's still, and the wrestling part of it's still fairly new, and it's just I feel even though Shaheem the OG and he's enjoying his time in Atlanta, I feel it's put on me to bring it to the forefront into the wrestling industry. So literally a week ago, I had a show where OTN was first announcing the wrestling world. So it's just, we just trying to see what we could do with it. And it's really we try to bring it to the public, but it's really a brotherhood of a lot of people, and a lot of people because I feel I was walking around in this world where I have nobody who could check me. You know what I mean? I could do whatever I want, and I have people who I respect their levels above me, and I can listen to everything they got to say, and I know they're not giving me no fake baloney, So that was it. But yeah, that's my social media. Camden Royalty, which is my personal, OTN, and Only the Ninjas. Just only things that I got right now on social media. Yeah.
Well, man, like I said, thank you so much, for coming out to the
for having
show.
me, man.
You know what I mean? No, seriously. And like I said, you were one of the first guys I met in the business. You definitely welcomed me with open arms. And obviously, you and Shaheem and a few other guys are my mentors, and just learning about this business. So I'm appreciative of a lot of the things that I had to learn from you guys. And I continue to learn. And like I said, this won't be the last. You're welcome to come on anytime, and we'll definitely be talking soon.
Oh, definitely, man. Thank you, man. I'm honored to be on your show, man. You know what I mean? I'm honored. I'm really honored, bro. Thanks for having me, man. I enjoyed this whole time. So just thank you, bro.
All right, you got it, man.
Well, that does it for this week's edition of the D-Lew Podcast. Once again, I want to thank the King of Camden royal money for stopping by and, shooting the breeze with me for almost 2 hours. I can't believe how long this interview took. But again, this wasn't an interview. This is just a conversation. And he was one of the first guys that I met in pro wrestling when I got into the business. And I can honestly say that I learned so much from him. And most of it was by watching him. Watching him as he broke down his matches, when he, going over a match, before a show, and just talking to me about psychology and, why he does or doesn't do certain things in the ring. And thus I became a better student of pro wrestling because of it. So, best wishes to Royal, all that he does. And he, of course, he's more than welcome to come back on the show, whatever he damn well pleases. But speaking of podcasts, there's another podcast that I want you all to tune into. I plugged them before, but it's called The Watchers Podcast, okay? And the fellas, it's 5 of them, okay? The fellas talk about everything that's going on in pop culture, sports, entertainment, etc. Any blockbuster movie that's out, they're going to talk about it. So if you search The Watchers Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, as well as YouTube, you'll be able to tune into their show every single week and hear what they have to say. It's very, very entertaining. I promise you that. Now, in regards to me, yours truly, you're a host of the D-Lew Podcast. You can go onto my social media. So that's Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and TikTok at @TheRealDTLew. Facebook is Derrick T. Lewis official page. Get your latest tees and hoodies over at shop.derricktLewis.com. You can hear me sing a little bit. I have some music out on all platforms. It's my first single, Selfish Pride, as well as my EP, Every Second Make It Count. Make sure you go into all of those platforms. You can stream all of my music, and as well as look at the music videos on Tidal, Apple Music, and also on YouTube. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, make sure that you hit subscribe, okay? Hit subscribe so every single Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, you'll be able to get all brand new content, all new episodes, and you can hear all interviews from all walks of life. So it's not just wrestling, it's everything in between. It's a variety show, and I'm here to bring it to you every single Thursday. Well, I'm going to get out of here, and just remember, as I always say, no matter what you do in life, always remember to make it count. Take care, guys.
Create the outdoor oasis you've dreamed of with help from NFM. Whether you're wanting a tranquil backyard retreat or a lively outdoor party space, find something you love from our huge selection with hundreds of new items arriving every day. Patio sets start at just $139. Shop the latest trends in backyard essentials, from rugs and pillows to flower pots and fountains. Long-term financing is available on qualifying purchases. Unwind and discover the joy of backyard living. Big selection, big savings. NFM.